welcoming you to a life of awareness. The Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kersner.
Hello and welcome to episode 21 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kersner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this amazing moment. The topic for today's podcast is overcoming adversity with presence. I chose this topic because I felt that everyone at some point in their life experiences adversity. Some people experience more adversity than others. Some people's duration of adversity is longer than others. But regardless, if you're a human being living on earth, I can guarantee you that at some point, today, tomorrow, whenever, adversity will arise. I invited guest host Tracy Fortune to the podcast today, and I did it for a very specific and singular reason. I had an opportunity to listen to her story, and I found it to be quite profound and moving, and for many reasons. She has been through quite a lot, and through it all, she has found a way to stay present. Sharing about our adversities, sharing about our trauma is hard, and it by itself can be traumatic because it forces us to be vulnerable, where we judge ourselves and then we fear being judged by others. But for the record, I am not excluded when I talk about people experiencing adversity. Sometimes with my patients, I delve a little bit into where I've come from and who I am. I grew up in an unhappy home with a bipolar father, and I experienced amazing adversity throughout my life. And, this podcast and this opportunity to speak is not my own right now because I want to open it up to Tracy. But I just wanted to share that tidbit to say that, look, we've all been through something and we're all going through something. But the goal is to be present through it all, through all the pain. Because, growing up, my present moment was just so painful and so undesirable that I learned firsthand how to not be present. And it took me a long time and therapy and everything else to learn how to be present, how to make peace with it. And, I reached a certain point in my life where I can talk about my childhood and my adversities and not have an emotional response to it. And that's how I know that I have made peace with it. And so, as you're listening to this podcast, as you're listening to me speak, think about some of the adversities that you've experienced and think about how you feel when you talk about it. Because if you're retelling your story and you feel the feelings, they come up and you're upset, you're angry, you're frustrated, well, that's an indicator. That's an opportunity for you to work on that because it's not resolved yet. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Tracy. So Tracy, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me, Paul. Thanks.
Of course. Sorry that I took up a little bit of our time, but I felt it's relevant and important for my audience and for you to understand that, I have walked the path. I have experienced pain. I've experienced adversity, and I have learned that, being present is truly one of the most important facets of the human experience, and it helps us process trauma because it allows us to accept that trauma and shift us away from the past and right into the present moment. Tracy, if you'd be so kind, please, take this opportunity to talk a little bit about who you are and where you've come from. I know that given the chance that there are many people out there that need to hear your story.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'd like to say that I grew up here in the East Valley, and at about the age about 7 or 8, my parents got split. They divorced. I was unaware of what was going on. I was still in the home. Nobody ever explained anything to me and my younger brother. We had to figure this out on our own after months. And within a month, we had another man move into the home. And he was very passive aggressive and extremely abusive, severely emotionally, physically, and sexually. And I had to learn to be strong at an early age and to take care of myself and my brother. My brother wasn't able to, he didn't have the strength at a young age to protect himself. So I had to learn early on how to take care of myself, my own needs, which I wasn't very good at. My emotional needs were shot. I had no connection with anybody. I was always upset, always depressed, and I never understood why it hurt to be a kid. Never understood it. Years progressed with this, and I started to become a teenager. I connected with a very good friend of mine that was my best friend in high school. She gave me that connection that I desired and needed. I started to get a little peace internally. I was able to understand what was going on in the home and how it wasn't right. And so I started to speak up for myself. Things started to get worse. And I was removed from the home, from the father. My mother was very passive. She didn't really acknowledge anything, was very oblivious to everything. I didn't understand why. I felt unloved, which of course we all know that that's not true. These are those feelings as a child that you get, those feelings of not accepting, low self-worth, which I've always struggled with. My whole life was self-worth. I moved in with my father at the age of 18, started to get a little freedom. I was able to even actually have a boyfriend. I wasn't able to do anything as a child. And what I noticed was my father was very happy, and I didn't understand what it is he was doing differently. I wanted some of that happiness. I come from a home that was very destructive. Coming into this, I'm like, okay, what is this? What is this? Dad, show me the secret. What is it? He goes, if you want to be happy and you want to be something, you got to make money. And he would just take wads of money out of his pocket and just fan it. And I would lay in it. And I would lay in the money and take pictures of me in it and video recordings. And I said, show me the way. Show me the way. And from there on, I was extremely focused, laser focused, dedicated to making money. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. But he showed me what to do. He's like, you're a natural salesperson. You need to do real estate. It's your quickest way in. So at 19 years old, I went to school and started from the ground up, learned from the big people and adapted it into my own, made a 6-figure income at the age of 24 and continued on and did very, very well at it. Started to gather a lot of friends. We had a lot of fun, a lot of trips. Life was great. I married my high school sweetheart, and things were amazing. The 2006, 2008 swing really, really had a damper on us. And so things started to go very quickly. Friendships started to stifle, and things weren't getting paid. Houses, I had to start letting go. Things had to be sold. And during these times, I became an alcoholic because I figured if I was to make money, then my parents would finally accept me, that I'm now part of their group, their clan. They've been so focused on career and look at I've done it. This is good. And it seemed to be never enough. And so I just let it go. I spun out of control. Was a heavy alcoholic, cocaine abuser, any other type of addiction you can think of. I've had major criminal speeding tickets. I used to be a stealer. anything to get some sort of spike of enjoyment, of something, of a good feeling. And it got to the point where I lost even a couple of very dear people to me that I became heartbroken over. And we ended up moving at the time, and I ended up getting pregnant. Was unexpected, had no plans on having any children, and was forced to sober up very fast. What I realized was that was my moment of escaping of this downward spiral of nonsense. I was going to a job just to pay my bills, to make everything just float, to make it. And when I decided to give up, I said, the facade, everything is just gone. I want out completely. This isn't serving me. I thought it was the money. I thought it was the friends. I thought it was buying people. I thought it was this, that made me who I was. And I lost everything, including myself at the time. Almost lost the marriage. My husband and I had some rough times. We had some times, my husband cheated on me, and regardless, we both acted out of lessons during the time, and we regrouped, and it was just us. And we decided we were going to stand up and we were going to move forward, whether it be with nobody else. So here I was with pregnant and moving into a rental, and my husband loses his career. So we're now both with no job, with this little baby, and selling furniture, doing what we can to just make it. Scared, because my dad, no one had any money at this point. Everyone, even my parents, were stripped down. They lost a lot of stuff. No one had anything, and all I had was just hope and positivity. And I always leaned on humor when I was younger to get me through what I needed to. And so my husband and I always used to just go and play, whether it be video games at a pizza place, just to get us through and have fun. And I knew it was temporary. I knew that this was gonna go through. My father at the time ran away from a lot of bills, and he lost everything as well. He moved to Mexico, and he got severely ill, deathly ill, that he almost didn't make it. And I ended up having to move him out and move him in with me and take care of him back to health. What an experience that was, that here I am trying to get my acceptance and my worth through my father, and yet he's trying to get it through his children. That was such a pristine, changing moment for my life at that time. And at that moment, I realized that I was starting to grow. Something was happening, and I did realize there was a purpose. There was a purpose for me at that time, whether it be not working, not having anything, but I was actually there for someone who really needed me at a time, and it was just completely out of love. Furthermore, we keep going. We ended up having another child, and things started to look up for us. I'm still a stay-at-home mom at this point, and kind of supporting my husband, building his career. What happens is that my son, at about a year old, gets epilepsy, and he has a neurological problem. He's got brain damage, permanent brain damage in the center of his brain. He was told he's got cerebral palsy. He would probably be unable to articulate, talk, and be like all the other children, and could possibly grow up even older into these issues. I didn't believe any of this. What I realized in that moment, this was a shifting point for my husband and I. We were taking care of ourselves badly. We were very highly toxic, alcoholic again, drugs, other things to hide the weakness, the pain of the past. And my son brought to us that it's time to wake up and make a change. And we started to notice that the foods were bad. Some of the toxicity, I started to go into juicing. But also, I started to develop acute illness in my back, a degenerative disc disease. They told me it was irreversible, that it was permanent, it was something that I couldn't get rid of. I was developing arthritis in the spine. I was going in weekly for shots, being put under from a 15-year problem with my back. It got to the point where I couldn't get off the floor. And I thought, what else is there? So my son's got this. During that time, I couldn't take care of myself, nor could I take care of my son. I've let myself go for so long, taking care of everyone else, including my brother also still lives with us. He's lived with us for 12 years. I'm taking care of everyone else, but no one's taking care of me. Nobody is taking care of me. I let myself spiral out of control. At that moment, I lay there on the ground and I said, I feel like dying because I am hurting so bad, but I have these 2 kids and I just can't leave yet. And that was my moment when I said, if there is something that's out there, anything. I mean, I'm not even religious, ever. Never was, never even opened a Bible. But I said, I've heard of people talking to something. If there's anything out there, I'm open. And I say yes. And that was the moment that something shifted in my life, was when I said yes to something externally. Things started to rapidly come into play, and it was very clear. I started to get ideas of what to do. Do juicing, do this, start yoga. I didn't know what yoga was. I didn't even understand any of this. But I started to get off the pain pills. I started to get off the prescription drugs, the alcohol. I got my medical marijuana card. Because of all the pain I was in, I was able to start doing yoga and do the moves without excruciating pain, to the point where a year in, I completely healed myself from the chronic disease of my back. Doctors still are in awe that I have not had any issues, and in fact, I'm able to do some really incredible things with my back now. So that was one major thing I came through. Going through with my son at the time. During this time, I was trying to bring back my son. I was on a health kick, and I have lost 100 pounds in just over 2 years by focusing on myself more. What I realized is I was able to take care of other people in a better way. And my son completely healed himself. He's on no more medications, on organic food, and a little bit more attention in the household, and he completely shifted. He walks fine, he's able to run, he goes up and down stairs. There is absolutely zero issue with this child. In fact, he's the youngest one in his class and is excelling. And I was floored at the second miracle that came, which led me to going and finding my path. All of a sudden, I stumbled upon this school, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts in Tempe, and somebody told me, several different people told me, you need to do Reiki. I didn't understand what it was. I had no idea, but I had a magical, mystical experience. I had an attunement done, and something hit me energetically. I don't know what it was, but it brought me down to the floor. And 36 years of not feeling any feelings, from being so repressed. That was the first time I felt something. The very first time was in that school, and something hit me and there was feelings, and it was the most incredible feeling in the entire world. There's unexplainable. It was something so magical and beautiful and just angelic. I have no idea. But it's now innate in me, and it's a part of me. And I went on with that, started to take life coaching, and healed a lot through those classes. Then went on to spiritual studies program, learned about anything from comparative religion to universal law and how energy matches energy, down to meditation, and became an ordained minister. And I'm kind of taking one day at a time. Well, during these classes, I come up and found out that I had another chronic disease that I developed, which was Hashimoto's, and that is a thyroid disorder. Come to find out, when I started to detox with juicing, I was doing extreme juicing. I would go for 30 days at a time, and my first 30-day cleanse, something happened to me, and I lost all of my hair, and I spun out of control, and I detoxed, and all this stuff was starting to come up. And what I realized is that I didn't understand at the time. It took about a year for me to be aware that I even had this issue, because I was very confused on how I could lose all my hair, and how I could seem to have some sort of illness, but yet I'm very spiritual, and I'm a vegan. I take care of myself extremely well, and I have very low stress. And what's going on here? So I inquired about it. Please, something, help me, show me. What is this? How did I develop this? And so my inner truth is that anything that happens to you, whether it be a disease, an illness, something as simple as a headache, it's all developed mentally and through the course of environmentally as well. So, but the root cause is something energetically due to your mental. And so I wanted to find out where was I thinking mentally? What is this issue? Where did I learn this energy? Where did I adapt this and say yes to it? So within 24 hours, I was in a Costco, and I get a touch on the back of my shoulder. And without even turning around, I felt it and I knew what it was. I turned around and it was my stepfather that I haven't seen for 15 years. And there it was. It just came all over me. He was the very first male figure in my life that was strong and powerful. And the woman in the situation, the mother, was passive. She didn't, speak up. And that's really the root cause of Hashimoto's and the thyroid is humiliation, not feeling that you can speak up, and, not feeling heard. When is it going to be my turn is basically what the mental cause of Hashimoto's is. And so at that moment when I was talking with him, all the feelings started to come up and it started to rise. And I was able to deal with it at that moment. Right there and there. I was able to feel it and recognize it and accept it. Say, okay, this situation was a lesson for me. And I adapted this at a young age. Now, it didn't ever surface and became into the physical manifestation until I detoxed. So when I detoxed, all of it started to come into physical manifestation form, basically. And I was able to acknowledge it, see it, and I could either just be a victim of it and say, okay, well, this is what happened to me, and I can just deal with it and take meds and do what I can every day, or I can prove the doctor's wrong and cure myself from another incurable disease, because I believe that everything is curable. And what I noticed is the lesson is what was in this is okay. If I could give an example, the human self says, okay, this happened to me and I am now a victim of this. I'm upset that this happened in my childhood. Why couldn't I have had a happier childhood? Why? So I could either say the human self says this, the spiritual self says, thank you for the lesson. So now I know what I don't want to be as a parent. And so at that present moment, I was able to make a distinction that what it is I learned from it, so I don't become a vibratory match to that bad or traumatic experience, is what some people do. They'll recreate their past experiences from their childhood because they're sitting in the human self of why this, why that, and you become a match to that. So you will go out and recreate that event. And I am learning that being in the spiritual self as well as the human self is extremely important, so I don't recreate these events. I can use them as lessons and move forward.
So, I mean, that's some story right there. And thank you for sharing, because it's not easy being so vulnerable and putting it all out there. You know, it is not easy. So we acknowledge your effort. With all that being said, you know, there's quite a few lessons that came forward. I think one of the ones that I noticed that you started talking about very quickly is a resistance of the present moment. And that's a learned behavior. It's also a survival behavior based on your environment. You know, so at a young age, when you had these parents that were so consumed with their own lives and maybe even narcissistic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and you know, is it their fault that they're narcissistic? I mean, probably not, because they were raised as probably by narcissists.
That's all that they've learned. And I was a narcissist my whole growing up until, the past few years, being aware of it.
You know, presence, you know, it's not always about things feeling good. In fact, it's about accepting the moment for whatever it is. You know, and if I'm going to reflect back to episode 9, you know, acceptance of the present moment, and I talk about this often, it's like, you know, we have to just accept things for how they are with the understanding that they're going to change. Now, during your life, I don't think anyone was there to step forward and tell you that, so you were constantly in survival mode, you know, just trying to get through the day, through the moment. And there's so many people that are in survival mode right now, and you know, that's all about fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system. And it's totally understandable that you behaved the way you did. It's just interesting to hear about how the universe came forward and gave you these opportunities, these significant opportunities to change, and that would have only taken place in the present moment. Mm-hmm. So, you know, with your son being born and your lower back issues being resolved, I mean, those are significant opportunities. Those are significant presence opportunities. But, you know, I imagine also that leading up to that, there were more than enough hints, but they're hard to see when you're not being present, you know. And so the goal of existing in the here and now is that we're conscious enough to see the hints. So
everything is a lesson. Everything, even this conversation, there's always something in it. And I always look for a message. In every conversation, there's nothing that is by just because. Yeah, nothing.
And you know, I believe everything does happen for a reason, you know, and you know, maybe the minutia we can set aside, but you know, life is not about coincidences. It's about meaningful interactions. And people, places, and things are put into our path so that we can learn and grow. And ultimately, we have the choice to do so. We can resist those messages, those people, places, and things, and then we're just going to set ourselves up to repeat it. And so it sounds like there was some resistance for a while, but you were resisting because you were in pain and you did not want to keep on being in pain, so you thought the things that you were doing were going to make you feel better. Really, they only made you feel better for a short amount of time, and they just created more pain. And so with your son coming down to this earth and making himself known, you know, and having these physical issues, they shifted you into the present moment because you had to deal with those issues.
I had no other choice.
Yeah.
And ironically, his birthday is 7/7, and he's born at 7 a.m. There's a reason. He's extremely special.
Yes. For those people who aren't numerically aware, you know, 777 is a divine number. I don't know exactly what it means, but you can Google it. But this really comes down to adversity and presence. Okay, when we hear a story like that, we understand the pain that took place. But it really was all to lead up to this very moment, to this present moment, so that you can look back and reflect and understand that it was, whether it was good or bad, it was for a reason. It helped mold who you are. It pushed you in different trajectories. Sometimes we need to lose everything so that we can start over and we can let go. So when you have such trauma, it's hard to really improve your life in the present moment if you're just collecting more trauma, more baggage.
Right. That's right.
And so, the question is could you be who you are now without having to lose almost everything? And the answer is, well, maybe, but that's not how it played out. So we have to accept exactly what took place in your life. Mm-hmm. Life is what you make of it. And it is not always easy. That is the truth. But at the end of the day, if we can hold a space, if we can be grateful, and this is actually an important topic and an important issue, is how can we have gratitude for a story like that? And it's that answer is very subjective. It's hard to be grateful for trauma, but if we can reframe it with the understanding that there were some tremendous lessons that took place,
and the growth that happened. I became such a strong, independent person. From all these experiences, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, the other truth is that as you get bumped into other people who are going through trauma in their present moment, you can relate to them, mm-hmm. You can establish a rapport with them, and you can ultimately serve them. In the beginning of the podcast, I talked a little bit about my childhood, and I think one of the reasons why the work that I do is so effective is that I've walked a mile in many people's shoes. I know what anxiety, stress, and depression feels like. So ultimately, I can work on that level and establish a working relationship very quickly and help people shift. If you're going through some level of trauma right now in your life, just keep the space that whatever's happening is for a reason. And one day, you're going to find out that you're going to be able to use that mm-hmm. to help other people. Because ultimately, on Earth, in this reality, we all have to be of service to others. We all have to be of service to others in the present moment. That's really an important caveat as well. It's about perception, it's about perspective, it's about understanding, it's about gratitude. But more than anything, it's about presence. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to choose a topic like this so that I had an opportunity to talk a little about my life. Tracy had an opportunity to talk a lot about her life. And everyone can listen and understand that, we're all going through something. All of us. We're all going through something. And we all have to hold space in that present moment with the understanding that everything is shifting. Nothing is staying the same. And it's all going to get better. So Tracy, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It really was a pleasure and honor to listen to your story. And in deep gratitude, deep sense of gratitude for your vulnerability. It's really important that you understand that and know that your message will be heard. And there are people out there that will understand that they're not alone, that there are other people that have gone through what they're going through, and things are going to get better. So Tracy, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to welcome everyone back to the present moment.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.